When God steps into a situation, the very atmosphere begins to shift in ways that human understanding cannot fully grasp. There is something indescribable about the presence of God, something that reaches deeper than words, deeper than emotions, deeper than logic. It is a divine intervention that transforms the environment around you and the condition within you. Where there was once tension, peace settles. Where confusion once dominated, clarity begins to rise. Where fear tried to grip your heart, courage suddenly awakens. God does not simply observe your situation from a distance. When he steps in, he brings his authority, his power, and his unmatched ability to change what seemed unchangeable. There are moments in life when the air feels heavy, when your surroundings feel spiritually suffocating, and when every breath feels like a struggle. You may not see the battle with your natural eyes, but you can feel the pressure. You can sense the discouragement. You can feel the weight of unseen opposition. But the moment God enters, that weight begins to break. Darkness cannot stay where light shows up. Fear cannot thrive where God's presence dwells. The enemies fighting against your peace, your purpose, and your progress lose their grip the moment God walks in. It doesn't always come with lightning or thunder. Sometimes it comes quietly, like a gentle shift in the wind. Sometimes it comes with a sudden realization that you are not standing alone. Sometimes it feels like renewed strength, as if your soul has inhaled hope again. Sometimes it feels like a whisper reminding you that God is still in control, still working, still fighting for you. His presence changes not only the environment around you, but the environment inside you. Your mind becomes calm. Your heart becomes steady. Your spirit becomes anchored. What used to overwhelm you begins to shrink in comparison to the God who now stands with you. When God steps in, the atmosphere of your home can shift. The walls that once echoed with conflict can suddenly feel like walls of refuge. The tension that used to invade your conversations can soften, making room for healing. When God steps into your mind, the storm of anxiety begins to settle because his peace is not dependent on circumstances. When God steps into your heart, bitterness loses its foundation, and wounds that seemed impossible to heal begin to close. When God steps into your situation, strategies become clearer, decisions become lighter, and obstacles begin to move out of the way. His presence carries authority that no force of darkness can resist. It commands peace, demands order, and releases strength. The atmosphere shifts because everything around you must respond to him. Every spiritual battle, every emotional weight, every lingering fear must bow under his presence. And even if nothing looks different on the outside at first, something powerful has already begun on the inside. What once felt chaotic begins to align. What once felt threatening becomes manageable. What once felt lost begins to return. You may not always feel him step in, but you will always see the evidence, the fear that suddenly loosens, the clarity that returns, the strength that rises, the peace that settles. When God steps in, the atmosphere shifts, and so do you. There are seasons in life when the weight you carry feels too heavy, when the battles you face seem too complex, and when the pressure around you feels like it's closing in from every side. You push, you pray, you try to stay strong, But deep inside, you know that some battles were never meant for you to fight alone. Human strength has limits. Human effort reaches a breaking point. Your mind can become exhausted, your emotions can be stretched thin, and your spirit can feel drained. Yet even in those moments, there is a powerful truth whispering through the struggle. You were not designed to carry every burden by yourself. There are battles that belong to God. Life has a way of placing us in situations that expose our limitations. It is not a sign of weakness. It is a reminder that we were created to depend on a strength greater than our own. When you try to handle everything alone, you end up carrying weights that are not yours to lift. You wrestle with things you were never equipped to defeat. You try to solve problems that only God can fix. And sometimes the frustration you feel is not because the battle is too big. It's because you're trying to fight a battle that was never assigned to you. There are moments when God watches you push and struggle, not because he wants you to suffer, but because he is waiting for you to stop fighting in your own strength. He is waiting for you to surrender the battle into his hands. Sometimes he allows the pressure to rise so you can finally realize that you cannot fix everything, control everything, or understand everything. You were created to lean on him. You were created to draw strength from him. You were created to walk with him so that when the enemy rises, you don't stand there alone. You stand with heaven backing you. When you finally come to the place where you say, God, I can't carry this anymore, something powerful happens. You shift from self-reliance to divine reliance. You open the door for God to step in and fight on your behalf. And God fights differently. He sees what you cannot see. He knows what you do not know. He understands the spiritual warfare behind what you're feeling in the natural. He defends you in places you don't even realize you're being attacked. He strengthens you in ways you didn't know you needed. What overwhelms you is nothing to him. Trying to handle every burden alone leads to exhaustion, but surrender leads to supernatural peace. Letting God fight for you doesn't mean you sit back and do nothing. It means you stop trying to force outcomes in your own strength. It means you trust God to lead, to shield, to guide, and to intervene. It means you show up, but you no longer show up as a warrior fighting alone. You show up with the confidence that the Lord is fighting with you and for you. Some battles are meant to teach you endurance. Others are meant to teach you trust. And some battles are meant to show you the power of stepping back so God can step forward. When you realize you were never meant to fight everything alone, the burden lifts, the fear loosens, and peace begins to flow again. God never expected you to carry the whole world on your shoulders. He simply asked you to trust him enough to let him carry what you cannot. There are times when life pushes you to the edge of what you can take, moments when everything around you seems to be collapsing, and you're left wondering if God hears you at all. Situations get darker, resources run out, relationships strain, and strength begins to fade. It is in these very moments when things look absolutely impossible that God often chooses to step in and reveal his power. Not because he wants you to suffer, but because impossible places become the perfect stage for his glory. When things are beyond your control, that's where he shows he was in control all along. We often look at impossible situations as signs of defeat, but heaven sees them as divine opportunities. When God waits to move, it is never delay, it is strategy. He waits until every human attempt has failed so that when the miracle happens, there is no confusion about where the victory came from. If the situation was easy, you might take credit. If the breakthrough happened early, someone else might receive the praise. But when the odds are stacked so high that only God could shift them, the testimony becomes undeniable. The impossible becomes the evidence that he is still the God of miracles. There are moments when God will purposely allow all other doors to close so you will see the one door only he can open. He'll let the wrong people walk out so the right ones can walk in. He'll allow plans to fall apart to realign you with his purpose. He'll let the storm rise so you'll see his power calm it. And sometimes he'll let the fire get hot, not to burn you, but to show you that he can stand in it with you. The impossible is not a prison. It is a platform for God to reveal what he has been preparing behind the scenes. We misunderstand God when we think he is late. God is never late, he is precise. He moves in the moment when the impact will be the greatest. He steps in when the testimony will be the loudest. He waits until everything looks hopeless so that hope becomes unmistakably supernatural. When the doctor says there's nothing left to do, when the bills are stacked higher than your income, when betrayal cuts deeper than you imagined, when your strength runs dry, these are the very moments God steps closer. These are the places where he does his best work. Sometimes God allows the impossible to stretch your faith. He allows the pressure to refine you. He allows the unanswered questions to deepen your trust. You learn who he truly is when the situation is beyond your control. You learn that he can make a way without a path, open a door without a handle, bring water out of a desert, and resurrect what everyone else declared dead. The impossible becomes a classroom where you discover the size of your God. And when he steps in, everything changes instantly. What was blocked suddenly opens. What was lost finds its way back. What was broken begins to heal. What was delayed gets released. What looked irreversible starts turning around. God moves in moments that look impossible because that's where his power shines the brightest. The very place where you feel trapped is the place where he is preparing your breakthrough. The situation that looks like the end is often the setup for the greatest testimony of your life. There are seasons when the weight of life makes you wonder if God has stepped away, if he has gone silent, or if he has forgotten the promises he made to you. The pressure feels relentless, the setbacks pile up, and the silence becomes louder than your prayers. In those moments, it's easy to confuse struggle with abandonment. It's easy to assume that hardship means God has distanced himself. But the truth is far deeper and far more comforting. Your struggles are not evidence of God's absence. They are often the clearest signs that he is preparing something powerful for you. God does some of his greatest work in hidden places. Just because you can't see him moving doesn't mean he isn't. A seed grows in the dark. A baby develops in the unseen. Diamonds are formed under pressure. Oil is produced through crushing. Breakthroughs often begin in silence. God may appear to be quiet, but he is not inactive. He may not be answering in the way you expect, but he is arranging things in ways you cannot see. The struggle becomes the evidence that something is shifting, something is maturing, and something is about to be revealed. Pain has a purpose in the kingdom of God. It refines, shapes, strengthens, and prepares you for what's coming next. When life feels heavy, it does not mean God has left. It means he is working on a deeper level. Sometimes he allows you to walk through challenges so you can discover your own strength in him. Sometimes he allows heartbreak so he can reveal where your trust truly lies. Sometimes he allows you to feel stretched so your faith can rise to a level it has never been before. He is not punishing you, he is positioning you. The enemy wants you to believe that God has forgotten you. He wants to isolate you in your pain, convince you that the silence is abandonment, and make you feel like you are fighting alone. But even when you can't feel God, he is closer than your breath. He is standing beside you in the storm, strengthening you through every tear, guiding you through every dark moment, and preparing you for a victory you can't yet see. Struggle is often a sign that the enemy sees what God is about to do in your life. The attack intensifies before the breakthrough. The night gets darkest before the morning. The pressure increases right before expansion. There are situations where God intentionally allows resistance to build spiritual endurance. If everything came easily, you would never discover what he placed inside you. If there were no battles, you would never see his power. If there were no storms, you would never learn that he can speak peace, be still. Your struggle becomes a canvas for God to paint his glory on. What feels like hardship is often God training you for greater responsibility, greater blessings, and greater purpose. So when you face moments that make you question God's presence, remember that he is working in the background. He is rearranging pieces you didn't even know needed to be moved. He is protecting you from dangers you didn't see coming. He is strengthening you for things you didn't know were ahead. The struggle is not abandonment, it is preparation. What you feel today is shaping who you will be tomorrow. Even in silence, God is speaking. Even in darkness, God is moving. Even in struggle, God is present. When God steps into a battle, everything the enemy planned begins to unravel, weaken, and fall apart. There is no strategy of darkness, no scheme of wickedness, no trap set against you that can stand when God releases his power. The enemy may come with intimidation, confusion, and fear, but none of these weapons can prosper when God raises his hand on your behalf. Every chain that once held you captive begins to break. Every wall that blocked your progress starts to crumble, and every voice that spoke defeat over you loses its authority. God has never lost a battle, and he will not start with yours. The enemy often attacks hardest when he sees what God is trying to release in your life. He senses the shift before you do. He sees the blessing forming before you notice the signs. So he tries to distract you, discourage you, or wear you down. But no matter how fierce the attack, it cannot overpower the one who fights for you. God knows every hidden plan of the enemy before it even reaches your doorstep. He knows every spiritual battle happening behind the scenes. And when he steps into that fight, the enemy has no choice but to back off, retreat, and surrender what he tried to steal. Sometimes we give the enemy too much credit. We look at the size of the storm and forget the power of the God who commands the wind. We see the strength of the opposition and forget the strength of the one who created the universe. But when God intervenes, his authority rearranges everything. He cancels assignments designed to destroy you. He dissolves spiritual attacks meant to consume you. He disrupts every plan that was crafted in darkness. The very thing the enemy meant for harm becomes the very thing God uses for elevation. Nothing the enemy forms can outlast the power of God. Chains break in God's presence, not because you are strong, but because he is. Addictions lose their grip. Depression loses its voice. Fear loses its momentum. The breakthroughs you couldn't force suddenly begin to happen. The doors you couldn't open suddenly swing wide. The opportunities that seemed far away suddenly find you. God has the ability to shift circumstances in a moment, and when he does, every chain crafted against you snaps like thread. The enemy cannot stand against a believer who knows who fights for them. When you understand that God is on your side, your posture changes. You don't tremble when the battle rises. You pray with authority. You don't run from the challenge. You face it knowing you're not alone. You don't fear the unknown. You trust the one who holds the future. The more you understand God's power, the less you fear the enemy's tactics. Every battle you've faced, every tear you've cried, every setback you've endured has not gone unnoticed. God sees every attempt the enemy has made to silence you, and he steps into the battle with the full weight of his glory. When he shows up, the enemy's plans collapse. His weapons fail, his lies fall powerless, and the victory that once seemed distant becomes your reality. God's presence breaks strongholds, cuts chains, and releases blessings that no enemy can block. When he fights for you, the battle shifts from threat to triumph. Prayer is more than words spoken into the air. It is an invitation for God to step into the battle, to breathe into the situation, and to move in ways far beyond human strength. When you pray, you open the door for heaven to intervene in places where your hands can no longer reach. Prayer is not passive, it is powerful. It shifts the atmosphere, aligns your heart with God's will, and activates divine authority over every struggle you face. When you pray sincerely, you are not begging, you are declaring your dependence on a God who never fails. You are calling on the one who already knows the outcome and has already prepared the victory. There are battles you can fight, and there are battles only God can handle. Prayer is what separates the two. Prayer allows you to step back and let God step forward. It reminds the enemy that you are not fighting with your own strength, but with the strength of the Almighty. Every time you pray, you are drawing a line in the spiritual realm, a line the enemy cannot cross. You are saying, God, take control, move where I cannot, break what I cannot break, heal what I cannot reach. And God responds to that kind of surrender with power. Prayer shifts your mind before it shifts your circumstances. Sometimes the change you need is internal. Anxiety begins to calm. Fear begins to fade. Strength begins to rise. The moment you turn your heart toward God, peace begins to flow, peace that doesn't match the situation, peace that makes no sense to the world around you, peace that reminds you that you are covered. Prayer gives you clarity in confusion and direction in moments when everything feels uncertain. It steadies your spirit and reminds you that God is closer than you think. Prayer also shifts the spiritual realm. Things happen when you pray that you can't see with your natural eyes. Angels are dispatched. Chains begin to loosen. Obstacles begin to move. Attacks are dismantled before they reach you. God begins to orchestrate divine connections, open unexpected doors, and release blessings that were held back. Prayer pushes back darkness and invites the light of God to invade places that once felt hopeless. It is not just communication, it is spiritual warfare. Every prayer you pray is a weapon formed in faith, and no force of darkness can withstand the power of a praying believer. When you pray, you also invite God into the deepest places of your heart. He begins to restore what has been broken, heal what has been wounded, and strengthen what has been weakened. Prayer detoxes your soul from bitterness, heaviness, and fear. It creates space for God to pour in new vision, new strength, and new hope. It is through prayer that God transforms you from the inside out, so that when the answer comes, you are ready to receive it. Prayer is where victory begins. It is where battles shift. It is where blessings are released and strongholds are destroyed. When you invite God through prayer, you are not just asking for help, you are partnering with the one who commands heaven and earth. Prayer opens the door for God to fight, restore, and transform every part of your life.